Hello and welcome to the second weekly review of the Universal Resurrection Cup. This is round 2, but before we get to that, let's take another look at the best play from round 1 as voted for by the Supreme Commander community, and the winner is the ACU drop by Lucian17 or Luxie on BC Blackheart or Dog. And here I'll leave you guys with one final look at this play before we move on to the next exciting things in round 2. The first match of round 2 saw Eisen face Zlo. Eisen had defeated TA for Life in a 3-2 victory to get to this stage, whereas Zlo had rather swept aside the challenge of Chevalier to get into the second round of the tournament, and both players played very similar styles with heavy land spam and heavy aggression, and we were expecting to see a very aggressive match between these two, and that's what happened here as both players attacked each other from the get-go. Both players started out on Cobalt Valley, the first map, going first land, but Zlo made the first aggressive move of the game, going for a second air factor and transitioning immediately into a Jester. This Jester did have some success against Eisen, killing a few outlying engineers, but it really didn't hamper Eisen in the way that Zlo probably would have wanted it to. This overhead view shows that Eisen was able to grab a lot of the map after the Jester had really failed to do anything from Zlo, showing that it was a pretty bad investment from Zlo here to do that, and Eisen was able to take the majority of the map and start to push directly at Zlo's ACU here. A quick move to Tech 2 seemed to be working out for Zlo as Eisen had his power very finely balanced and could not afford overcharges, but eventually Eisen was able to go Tech 2, and his superior map control allowed him to spam just as much as Zlo and eventually overtake him. Here Zlo is able to push Eisen back for the moment until Eisen is able to regroup with his troops in the back. For a little bit it was unclear just how far Zlo was willing to push the matter as he continued to push and push and push, apparently looking for a draw, but Eisen was able to move away and Zlo eventually gave up the chase, not wanting to sacrifice a possible win in this game after he had gone Tech 2. The Tech 2 tanks were managing to push back on the rest of the map and were grabbing map control back from Zlo, but as it turned out, it probably would have been better for him to take the draw as he was still behind in terms of economy here. Now it was Zlo's turn to be pushed back as he could not overcharge with any kind of decent rate, and Eisen's pillars pushed him all the way back onto his side of the map where he emerged with just about 2,000 health remaining on his ACU. A close call for Zlo here. A point defense from Zlo bought him a little bit of time to reinforce his position, but Eisen was able to push him back yet again. Zlo was just unable to get any footholds in this game after failing with his early Jester. At this point, Zlo's early push to Tech 2 seemed to be paying off as he was able to push into Eisen's base, but he wasn't able to make up for the lack of map control suffered early on in the match, and his continual investment in air put him farther behind in land as he was unable to cope with Eisen's superior land spam here at the Tech 2 level. A temporary pushback from Zlo did set up a tense encounter in the middle as both players faced off against each other with Tech 2 forces, but eventually there was a push from Eisen and Zlo was not able to deal with that, and it was a win in Game 1 for Eisen to give him a lead over Zlo going into Game 2. As you'll see here, once the standoff begins, Eisen will eventually push and put an end to the first game. Very well played from Eisen in this one.
Sound my knife and stop the ground. You should make it when
The second map, Standing Stone, saw both players go first land and pick Cybern, so very aggressive choices from both players. Eisen was the more aggressive of the two, however, going for light assault bots, but having very limited success with them. Zlo defended very well, although Eisen did manage to kill one engineer out of the 3 targets, so some success there for Eisen. He also was first to the middle, grabbing the mexes and rocks there. Zlo's plans were made clear a few moments later as he went for Tech 2 very early on and then went for 3 more Tech 2 factors as soon as his first was complete. In fact, getting 4 up by the time Eisen was still upgrading his factory to Tech 2. That put Zlo at a huge advantage going into the middle part of the game here, as he had the temporary land advantage and he used it to full effect here, eventually trapping Eisen and leading to a very quick win for him in game 2, taking us to a 1-1 series going into the third map, Setton's Clutch. It was difficult to pick a winner between these two on Setton's Clutch, as both players are good on open, expansive maps here, but it was decided early on, essentially, as Zlo went for an extremely early transport, and his attempts to take the middle mass were blocked off by Eisen, shutting down the early transport from Zlo extremely well, and even though a point defense was up, all the engineers were killed, meaning that Zlo could not take advantage of his early transport, sending him very far behind early on, and Eisen essentially had free reign over the middle for the early portions of the game, giving him a gigantic advantage heading into the mid-game. Here we did see a challenge from Zlo to get the middle mass as he dropped 2 engineers here, and there was a chaotic battle that ensued afterwards for the control of the middle mass. Eventually, Eisen dropped onto Zlo's rock expansion, and this proved to be a huge problem for Zlo throughout this game, as Eisen established a huge base here which would pour out units throughout the game, creating a huge problem for Zlo here. Both players did take the islands on the opposite side of their starting positions, rather interesting there, but the real problem for Zlo was that Eisen was starting to create lots and lots of units from the rock base here, something that Zlo just wasn't able to deal with. He couldn't respond with enough force, and there was a huge air fight here to see who would have control of air for the mid-game, a very important moment of this game in which Eisen had the clear advantage here with a huge interceptor spam, and then using Corsairs to take out key buildings for Zlo. The appearance of Tech 2 land in the rock base made a huge problem for Zlo to deal with, and although Zlo did eventually get the better of Navy, it didn't matter in this game as he wasn't able to use it to full effect. The real problem was Eisen's rock base, and the units just continued to flow out, pouring all over the back of Zlo's base, and he just wasn't able to deal with all the units at the same time. And a loyalist push from the front saw Zlo pretty much end his hopes of surviving this game, as he was just too far behind from his losses in the back to try and deal with Tech 3 units in the front. The advent of Tech 3 Air here from Eisen effectively ended the game, as Zlo had absolutely nothing to show to combat Tech 3 Air here, as he was sieged from all sides, and eventually he was killed by Eisen, putting Eisen ahead yet again here in the series 2-1, and Eisen was just 1 game away from sealing his position in the semifinals. As Zlo had the pick of map 4, he picked Roanoke Abyss, and apparently Eisen sensed something bad about Zlo's plans here, so he went for first bomber to try and disrupt any kind of build that Zlo had. He did have limited success with his bomber, but this is not a map that's suitable for first bomber play, and he did not kill any expanding engineers, just base engineers, so really not anything gained from Eisen's point of view here, and really it helped Zlo more than hindered him, as it put Eisen in a huge disadvantage early on. Eisen continued his fast start to the game, catching in a transport from Zlo and killing it, but Zlo eventually did regain air control and he took advantage and just bossed the game from that point on, using Tech 1 to full effect. In the subsequent skirmishes around the map, we will see that Zlo uses his units much better, actually denying an expansion engineer from Eisen, which is something that Eisen failed to do throughout this game, so Zlo did have the better of the early Tech 1 exchanges, and that just gave him the advantage that he needed to continue to put the pressure on Eisen. Eisen, sensing that he was a little bit behind in this game, went for Tech 2 air to try and change something, but Zlo had a gigantic air spam set up and nothing was going to take away his air control here, as Eisen provokes an air fight which Zlo easily wins here to take a huge step in setting the tempo of this game. Zlo then had the better of the early naval exchanges, using frigates to deny the outer mexes on all different islands of Eisen, and then dropping on these islands. Zlo was literally playing everywhere at this point in the game, and Eisen was not able to deal with all the different positions at once, especially not after having a disadvantage from the very outset of this game. As Zlo continued to add pressure, the map control from Eisen just started to disappear, and as gunships came in to finish off the last remnants of a comeback from Eisen in the form of Tech 2 Navy, the game was really lost for Eisen, and he control K'd, giving the Zlo an equalizer at 2-2. Although Eisen did have the choice of map for Game 5, giving him a huge advantage to move into the semifinals, and Zlo would have to be on top form to prevent Eisen from doing that. For Game 5, Eisen again went with his ace map, Desert Arena, and he made a predictably really good start to this, defending from Zlo quite brilliantly on 2 occasions from the same Mantis. As Zlo attempted to come in to kill engineers twice, he was denied twice by Eisen's defense, and Eisen started to score some impressive engineer kills on the other end, giving him the advantage in the early game. However, it was to be a few micro mistakes later on that would cost Eisen, starting off with the loss of an engineer building a Hydra here, the first glimpse that Zlo was getting into the early game. So a very, very even start to the game here between these two players. Here, the first mistake from Eisen was getting sandwiched by Zlo's units, and the early advantage here for Zlo allowed him to regroup with his ACU, and eventually just cause havoc all along the right and bottom sides of the map. From this point on, Eisen's army was split into 2, and Zlo just played with him and pushed him into different corners of the map, and it was really a very difficult point from Eisen to come back from. He did do extremely well, but Zlo just had a little bit of an advantage early on, and he made it count throughout the rest of this game. This victory on the bottom here for Zlo spelled a huge setback for Eisen, as Zlo was able to completely take over the bottom side of the map, leaving Eisen's ACU stranded here and allowing Zlo to just continue to have a field day with his ACU, farming as many units as he wanted to. And with Eisen's ACU stuck behind enemy lines, it was only a matter of time before Zlo caught him out, and that happened in quite some style here. It seems that the early micro mistake really snowballed into a loss for Eisen, and the comeback was complete from Zlo as he came down from being a game down twice, in fact, to take the series 3-2. Well played to Zlo in this one. The next match did feature a Ukraine versus Germany match in Pacher Rico against Voodoo. Pacher Rico had swept Deathly 3-0 to get to this point, whereas Voodoo had gotten past a tough Mr. Smith 3-1 to advance into this round. The winner of this match would play against Zlo, the very impressive Russian who just beat Eisen in that other match. So let's see what happened between these two players. Game 1 started off with both players going first land, but it was an absolute disaster for Voodoo as he tried to be aggressive here and paid the price as none of his labs were able to accomplish anything, and eventually he did go third air, but his UEF bomber did not accomplish anything, putting him further behind in land than he already was with his failed micro with the labs. The next problem to befall Voodoo was an overreaction to 4 tanks from Pacher Rico, and even the overreaction failed to kill the tanks. It just seemed as though Voodoo was not fully there in the first game, and his ACU was caught out as his units were stuck in his own base. So that led to as quick a first game as you'll probably ever see in this tournament, as Pacher Rico simply took his units and killed Voodoo straight off. Very uncharacteristic of Voodoo to get killed in this fashion, but it was a win in game 1 for Pacher Rico. Game 2 went a lot better for Voodoo here in the early game as he was able to defend against Pacher Rico's attacks brilliantly and secure his expansions at the same time on the north without losing anything in the early game, so very well played from Voodoo early on here. Voodoo then took a leaf out of Zlo's book and went for Tech 2 almost straight off while moving his ACU to the middle. He then went on the attack with Tech 1 units to ensure that Pacher Rico would not be taking map control while Voodoo attempted to get Tech 2 units. The two ACUs met in the middle, and there was really no impact on the game from the ACUs as they just took some shots at each other, but both players knew to avoid sending their units at the ACUs. Voodoo then enjoyed a long period of successful raiding against Pacher Rico, taking out a few mexes all around the map, and then Voodoo did start a tech, or not a tech, but a gun upgrade on his ACU. And this gun upgrade was actually very finely balanced with his eco. Very impressive stuff from Voodoo, and he did get that gun upgrade and make a push into the middle. Some may call this an all-in, but I don't think it was an all-in. It was certainly a very hard middle of the game push from Voodoo here. Pacher Rico did make a mistake by coming back into the middle. He really had no chance of stopping Voodoo's ACU with the gun and pillars. But this was a very quick game 2, just like game 1, and it was 1-1 after 2 games here. Very well played to Voodoo to take a win in this series. Game 3 began, and Voodoo had to play against Pacher Rico on Sutton's Clutch, which is not exactly a great proposition as Pacher Rico is extremely good at these big eco games. He does have a significant advantage over Voodoo in game types such as this, although Voodoo did go for the middle mass extremely early just as Zlo had done, but Pacher Rico was there with a bomber. But Voodoo eventually managed to snipe 2 bombers while keeping an engineer alive, so enjoy this amazing display of engineer micro from Voodoo. This did, however, just prolong the inevitable as Pacher Rico did drop the middle and establish a base there. He did end up taking the majority of the mass there, but Voodoo's engineer heroics did allow him to compete a little bit in gaining the middle mass. It's these situations where Pacher Rico's superior APM and efficiency in giving unit orders becomes apparent, as he did take both islands while managing to fight off Voodoo in the middle here with point defense and units. There's a very complete display from Pacher Rico as he was able to take all the different aspects of the map here. Voodoo did have one foothold on Pacher Rico's side of the map, but that was very well repelled in the end. Voodoo, sensing that his chance was in Navy, went for a fast Tech 2 naval push on the right hand side, but his problems were in the middle here as he tried to defend from Pacher Rico. And then came a drop from Pacher Rico that would deny the left hand side for Voodoo. A devastating blow as Pacher Rico had already secured his side of the map. And here this was just delay-ins for Voodoo. He wasn't able to get his maxes up in time, and that proved to be a devastating blow. The fight in the middle here remained largely a stalemate, but the game was decided by the sides of the map. You can see a cruiser from Voodoo in the side there, as he did have naval control, but he didn't manage to do a lot with it, as Pacher Rico did keep him largely contained. And then came the game-winning moves from Pacher Rico, as he dropped a Harbinger there, and then dropped two more right next to it. And having three Harbingers running around inside your expansions when you don't have Tech 3 is not ideal here. You can see the other two Harbingers arriving, and they did split up and kill all of Voodoo's map control here. Not a good situation, and it got even worse as Pacher Rico timed this perfectly with a gunship attack on Voodoo's other side of the map. So really a four-pronged attack here, perfectly executed from Pacher Rico and almost impossible to deal with. And you can see the Mantis have absolutely no chance against Harbingers, and here come the gunships right into Voodoo's base to kill everything. Voodoo did actually manage to win air control, so these gunships were not as effective as they might have been, but they did snipe 3 Tech 2 power generators, making them pretty damn effective here. And Voodoo was in huge trouble after this gunship attack. He didn't have the power to compete with Pacher Rico, who was already getting his resource allocation. Pacher Rico did not relent with the pressure, dropping another 2 Harbingers onto Voodoo's side here, giving him extra problems to deal with. The first semblance of joy for Voodoo came when his cruiser wasn't able to attack the mexes of Pacher Rico, but it was barely anything, and Voodoo did try something radical to change the game here as he moved 3 destroyers across the land strip to try and do something to Pacher Rico's navy, but it was futile here as they all just ended up dying. And this gave Pacher Rico control of both sides, essentially, and that really put an end to the game as Pacher Rico had both oceans. The problems for Voodoo just continued as Pacher Rico just had so many units on his side of the map. Although Voodoo did continue to push on the right hand side, there were Tech 3 torpedo bombers from Pacher Rico. And Voodoo here did show a glimmer of hope as he was able to push back some Harbingers with bricks, but it was far, far too late here. You can see Pacher Rico wins the Navy on the right hand side, and with both oceans gone and air control gone, there's really nothing you can do on Sutton's clutch, and Pacher Rico did roll to a 2-1 lead in this series. Just one loss from elimination. The choice of map 4 went to Voodoo, and he picked Fields of Thunder, obviously a map that he had practiced, and both players went for a full-on land spam here. And it was just a joy to watch these two players go for huge micro, and it was just an all-out spam war here. So I'm just going to leave the video to play, and you can enjoy some great micro from two of the best players in the game. The move that really changed the game here was Voodoo's attack on the bottom left, where he destroyed Pacher Rico's ability to reclaim, and that really did leave Pacher Rico mass starved while Voodoo was able to continue to reclaim on the top right, and that gave him a huge unit advantage, allowed him to go Tech 2, and with superior micro and superior numbers, Voodoo eventually did grind out a result here. As Pacher Rico noticed he was being surrounded, he attempted to go for Voodoo's ACU, probably trying to get a very, very hopeful draw, but there was no way Voodoo was going to let this game slip here, making no mistake in killing Pacher Rico and tying the series at 2-2, leaving Pacher Rico with the final map choice. For map 5, Pacher Rico chose the Ditch, a map that he's known for playing extremely well because he is one of the most efficient APM users in this game. And he started off with a statement of intent bombing Voodoo's early power engineers to prevent him from taking advantage of the mass, and in general Pacher Rico just looked sharper in the early game. Voodoo might have had a little bit of fatigue here. Pacher Rico did go for a very hard air push early on. You can see from this shot he clearly has the early air advantage. The gunships began to make their presence felt, and Pacher Rico used them very well throughout this game, raiding and denying stuff from Voodoo, especially the top left expansion. Voodoo was not able to secure that throughout this game, a very bad blow for him. A difference between these two players was that Pacher Rico did go for Tech 2 Navy, Voodoo did not, but that didn't really have a huge impact in this game. Perhaps feeling the land game slipping away from him, Voodoo did go for a Monkey Lord to try and fix that, but Tech 3 Air was already online for Pacher Rico, making Monkey Lords obsolete by this point. Voodoo's one and only push into Pacher Rico territory was denied very well, and strategic bombers plus brick drops are not a good way to have the enemy attacking you here, giving Voodoo all sorts of problems. However, Voodoo did have one quite brilliant play with this Monkey Lord here, keeping its head above water and absolutely decimating Pacher Rico's navy. Surely a play of the week nominee here, as the Monkey Lord just shows that it's a badass naval unit as well as a land unit here. The top expansion, however, was completely gone for Voodoo, giving him very little hope of making up the economic gap, and the superior air force from Pacher Rico eventually did kill off this Monkey Lord. There was an air fight which was very close, but Pacher Rico already had the resources available to kill this Monkey Lord and really end Voodoo's hopes of trying to make a push into his territory. The ever more desperate Voodoo attempted to use another Monkey Lord to take the top left expansion, but it was far too late for that. Pacher Rico had the air power necessary to just end the game, and Pacher Rico did do exactly that, taking this series 3-2 and moving on to the semifinals against Slow. What a match we'll have there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. The third match of round 2 saw Vor Ajax of Finland take on the Imponible from the US. Ajax had narrowly beaten Embers in the first round, whereas the Imponible had swept Mozart. Who would come out on top in this battle between the informed Finn and the ever-solid American? The game started off with a Cybern on Seraphim matchup on Cobalt Valley, and Ajax made a good start, having good defense against the light assault bot of the Imponible. Not a big deal, but I still think better of the early play, and the Imponible did get a bomb in on Ajax's engineers, whereas Ajax also created a bomber that did not do anything, so a little bit more even there. The next few minutes of the game saw Ajax take complete control as he had units all over the map, and just seemed like his build order was far superior to that of the Imponible, and he just had units all over the map, and of course it wouldn't be an Ajax game without an early Tech 2 push. He did eventually do that, and after running over some production in the middle, he did retreat to regroup with his Tech 2 units. That gave the Imponible the opportunity to make the gun on his ASU to try and counter the Tech 2 push, and from this we saw an epic battle ensue in the middle of the map, in which the Imponible had more units, but he did make a positioning mistake which allowed Ajax to simply target fire him into submission, and Ajax took game 1 here in rather quick fashion, as his Ilshavas were sufficiently far away to not get overcharged instantly, and he was able to lay down significant fire on the Imponible straight off here. Game 2 saw the Imponible in dire need of something to change the game, as last game he was completely run over by Ajax, so he went for first bomber, as is his MO. However, it was scouted very early and it was completely shut down by Ajax. This is a very impressive bomber defense here, as the engineer completely avoids the attentions of the bomber while anti-air is pumped out. And in the meantime, the 2 Selines that scouted the bomber actually did manage to kill 2 engineers because the Imponible was too busy focusing on microing his bomber. So a huge win for Ajax early on. You can see back towards the base of the Imponible, as Seline is killing an engineer, Ajax making his distaste for the bomber perfectly clear here. But in any case, a perfect defense from Ajax here. He will let 1 engineer go, but the amount of resources and time gained from this is just priceless. Here you can see the Seline killing off the 2nd engineer from the Imponible. The Imponible did reach the middle first, and he would hold the middle for the entire game, and that really did keep him in it, as he had trouble holding onto his side expansions, but he did do a good job of controlling the middle of the map here, as you'll see throughout this game. A bomber from Ajax had far more success over the Imponible's base, gathering a total of 8 kills before it was eventually killed off later. You can see here it's bombing power and engineers taking out all targets of importance from the Imponible, just digging a deeper and deeper hole for the Imponible to try and dig himself out of. Here you can see one of the sides completely evaporate from the Imponible. No defense whatsoever. Ajax just strolls in with some tanks, and he's going to be able to kill all the mexes here. Really no fight to control the sides from the Imponible. And of course the ever predictable Ajax goes for Tech 2 land. It's predictable but effective. He always does it, and he made the Ilshava's presence known, eventually starting to counter the Aurora spectacularly with bombers and Ilshavas. The Imponible obtained the double gun, which really did allow him to grow into the game a little bit. Without this, the game would certainly have been over a lot faster. But as it was, he was able to push significantly on different fronts here, as Ajax also tended to get a double gun. You can see the other side now going up in flames, including a strangely placed Tech 2 mech there. A devastating blow for the Imponible here. Ajax then makes a counter push, and it's just a little bit of back and forth here, but the Imponible did eventually run out of units, and Ajax did catch him, and once he caught him, there was no way back. And it was a Game 2 victory for Ajax, putting him within 1 win of reaching the semifinals. After 2 fairly close games in which the Imponible received nothing, He was understandably a little bit frustrated here, and he went for a transport straight away, and he couldn't have been excited to see this for Magic's next. A highly unpredictable build order involving lots and lots of labs, making it very difficult for the Imponible to place his transport not where he wants to put it there on the edge. He can't put it in the middle because of the lab presence, so he was forced to establish a base farther back, and he just couldn't get the middle mass here. And since his early investment did not work, he really wasn't able to grow into the game at all. You can see the problems for the Imponible start straight off with labs making it all the way to his back mexes very early in this game. He just received no respite from Ajax. As Ajax's ACU reached the middle, it became apparent that the Imponible was not going to be able to take the middle, not with an ACU there, but he did make a good effort of it, and it was a huge fight for the middle mass here. You can see the light assault bots doing very well against the tanks, but eventually they did start to lose their place in the fight, but the light assault bot play from Ajax was very impressive in this game. Light assault bots continued to be used by Ajax here with a drop to deny even more map control for the Imponible. At this point, really the game was up because he was pushing through the middle, and the Imponible just understandably lost interest in the game. There was really nothing he could do to come back from this, and he quit, leaving Ajax in the semifinals. Well played, mate, 3-0. And so that will wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen, for the second round Saturday review. As you can see from the bracket here, we still need to cover V versus Blackheart. I think that will be Sunday, depending on when you see this video. It might have already happened, I don't know, but as of this video, that match has still to be played. And so I will be bringing you that one. Maybe if not with commentary, I might do the same thing that I did for the Sunday review in the other week. But I'll also definitely be bringing you the Plays of the Week video for this week as well. That'll be tomorrow. I might even make a predictions video, but we definitely have some great matches coming up. You know, Pacher Rico versus Zlo, that's going to be a great one. I really have absolutely no idea how that one will go. We'll have to see how the maps are before we can make any calls on that. I think I'll do that. After the maps are announced, I'll make my prediction video to see how close I can get it to the actual result. And the same thing for the other match, Ajax versus either V or Blackheart. It's going to be great. So we have some great matches coming up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, please like it, subscribe, etc. And I'll see you guys later.